guys, Hiking here, bringing you part 2 of this discussion video regarding the DOS column leaks and rumors. So we went through RE7, RE2 remake, and RE3 remake, and now we're going to RE8 Village. So let's go through this. Remember to like and subscribe, and yeah, let's go through this. RE8 is going to be a fun one, since this is another deal with a lot of misinformation. Let me start with this. People claim I stole information from Biohazard Declassified. I never did. Why? Because Jesse from Biohazard Declassified and myself were personal friends who talk multiple times a week. Biohazard Declassified has never really posted bullshit, you know what I mean? So thankfully I can prove this super easily. We have a huge history of talking in Discord. We had each other's phone numbers and talked on the phone nearly every week. We'd add each other and credit each other all the time on Twitter itself. Even on like a few of those now. Jesse left the Resident Evil community in 2022 and he's on to other things in life, deleting socials, but here's some stuff from my side. I won't make this a Twitter thread, but Jesse and I were close and often would research each other's rumors, share info and such. He also would be the one to publish his info, while sometimes I might go to post shakier info since I don't care as much about my reputation at the other side. He was working hard at, so whether people are like, oh, he stole info. I'm rolling my eyes so hard since the person writing the articles Jesse and myself were friends who talk regularly. Now let's address some point in that thread. RE8 I got things right and wrong about, and I'll talk about it. Nothing yet, but Jesse though has a pretty interesting rumor he plans to drop on Biohazard Cast sometime. So I'm confused. Is Biohazard Cast and Biohazard Declassified the same or not? That's very confusing of the Village's release that we're sitting on for now. Right now is Village time. Village is literally less than a month and a half away. It deserves the attention. Someone said that the next big Resident Evil game location, so this is interesting. So this is one of the things that DOS got wrong. This was after Resident Evil 8 was released. Someone said that the next big Resident Evil game location is Australia. Is that true? And DOS said, that's for me. So yes, at least for now. I'm like 90% sure it's true. Immediately, we got a post discrediting him and showing that he's bullshitting. Idiot. It'll be Jesse does horror from Biohazard Classified or post a rumor piece on Outrage. I'll wait for him to post it to talk about more on Outrage. For now, it deserves the attention. It'll likely be excellent. Will you delve into? Okay. This one I'll leave a comment about. I know Jess has been doing a lot of research and digging into verifying info. It includes several new info points on RE8 interested, though it may include a few potential spoilers. Okay. So I'm very confused about Cast and Declassified. Are they the same? Are they not the same? And I remember Dusk making the point about something about how RE8 relates to like the previous games, and it really didn't. Like, and you had this guy reply, I can't see how RE8 story relates to any RE game other than RE7 and RE2, even though you hinted that fans should play Code Veronica, RE4, and Lost in Nightmares or Resident Evil preparation of this game. So I don't remember that Dusk ever said this. This comes out a bit of nowhere from this commenter here. If DOS did say that, it's very strange because Resident Evil 8, besides the Spencer and Umbrella connection that you get, didn't really have anything connected to Code Veronica, RE4, or Lost in Nightmares. I guess maybe aesthetic-wise, if we're going there, like the aesthetics and that, like the concept, the castle and the villains and all that maybe, like, but I don't know. This part, okay, so this part is true. Like, yeah, if you guys remember, Dusk made a comment about how RE8 was years away. And this was back in early 2020, and literally this anonymous leaker posted on, I believe it was Biohazard Cast. I don't know if Cast or Declassified are one and the same, but someone leaked a bunch of stuff there, and they pretty much got a lot of the info right. And then a few months before RE8 was released, DOS started posting stuff and adding his own bullshit to it, because he did take it. He did. I'm not like, here's the thing, right? He's saying something about, oh, info getting stolen from Jesse. Like, who the hell is Jesse? Who the hell is Jesse? We're talking about some random leaker, right? Posting stuff to this site, and then Dusk Golem stole this random leaker's stuff. Are you telling me that Jesse was the guy who posted this stuff? I don't remember that. It wasn't Jesse. Jesse, or like, again, I don't know who that is. This part is true, but out of context. I had a huge misconception to RE8 before its reveal, because the first time I heard about Village was as Revelations 3. So I had a lot of wires crossed between the two projects, and I thought the game starring Ethan in the Snowy Village was Revelations 3, and what is coming out now, or rather, the Singapore multiplayer open world version of RE8, get to that, was RE8. That part is actually not fully accurate. RE8 was never was never Revelations 3. It, for a time, was a standalone spin-off, just titled Village. But as a result of thinking they were the same, a lot of my early stuff on RE8 are inaccurate because of this. People can point to that and I'll take the hit because that's fair. The rest have more to say about that. Again, they claim I still Jesse's info, but no. Here's the thing. I read through the Reddit post. There is nothing about the guy claiming he stole from Jesse. The guy is saying that he stole leaks from Biohazard Declassified. Leaks that were posted to Biohazard Declassified. Right? Even I have said this. Even I said this as well. Like, Biohazard Declassified got a leak literally a week after Dusk posted saying that RE8 was years away. This random leaker got a whole bunch of shit right. And we're going to go through that. We're going to go through... Let me see if I can find it. So, here we go. January 21, 2020. RE8 development rebooted and years away from release. So this was a post on Reddit that was pretty much pointing out all the BS that Dusk was saying at the time. Those familiar with Resident Evil RE leaks will no doubt be no stranger to the name Dusk Golem. Golem is a notorious leaker for almost anything RE, and while their track record may be hit or miss, at this point we can pretty much confirm it is hit or miss. He's gotten a lot of stuff right, he's gotten a lot of stuff wrong. It is hard to argue that they do have at least some insider knowledge. Way back in January 2020, Dusk claims that RE8 development had been rebooted and not to expect the game for a few years. The leaker claims that development began as early as 2016, but was put on the back burner as Capcom needed more hands for the RE7 DLC. He then goes on to state that the version of RE8 being developed at this time is only 6 to 7 months old and that the game is still years away. He does also claim that 2021 will see the release of a new Resident Evil game, but it won't be RE8 or a remake of an older classic in the series. Clearly he was bloody wrong. Outcome? False. Creators have confirmed that Village was never originally another game. The game did end up releasing in 2021. Yes, we did get a documentary where the creators pretty much said this game was a direct sequel. It was never a spin-off game. May 8, 2020. Multiple villains and an Alan. Once again, Dusk Golem strikes again, this time claiming that RE8 will feature more than one villain and makes reference to a character named Alan. Yes, we all know it's going to have multiple villains, but there was no Alan. There's one unconfirmed thing I've heard I'll throw at you involving a guy named Alan. I'm partially sharing that bit to stir the kettle some, I admit though. See, even he said it here, right? He's saying it here that he knew that this was unconfirmed, and yet he's posting something. He's posting a leak that's bullshit, that he knows is bullshit because he wants to stir the kettle. So this is a guy who purposely posts stuff to stir trouble. Like, come on, man. Like, you're going through all of this crap right now. You're having this meltdown. You're going through all this crap trying to prove your validity, whatever you want to call it, your legitimacy, and then we've seen stuff like this that you're not talking about. Like, wherever this ended up being, I have no idea. But yep, he was right about multiple villains, even if it had been alluded to earlier. Outcome? False. Safe bet to say multiple villains based on a franchise history and so on. No, yeah, it's true. It is false. We all knew it's gonna have multiple villains. It's crazy. April 3rd, 2020. Kind of weird, we went from May to April, but okay. Ethan returns, FPS, originally Revelations 3. Once again, according to Dusk Golem, the next entry in the series is a massive departure from previous games, and that it will be a tough pill to swallow for RE purists. The article covers the claims that playable protagonist for RE7 Ethan returns in this game as the playable character. He also supports the claims of it being set in a village and feature werewolves. However, the biggest claim is that purists will hate it as it covers themes of optimism, insanity, and not being able to trust people. Outcome? False. While there are themes and some stuff to do that do feature that he mentions, he hardly leaks or reveals anything new or specific. Was never Revelations 3. Now here's the thing. April 3rd is when Dusk started posting about this stuff, right? About Ethan coming back and that, and it featuring werewolves. Here's the thing. We already knew about this back in late January. Literally, this anonymous leaker posted stuff to Biohazard Declassified or Biohazard Cast, whichever it is, I don't really know. And they said that Ethan was coming back, Chris was coming back, snow environments, lichens, werewolves, whatever you want to call it, the title and the release date, or in this case the release year, whatever. They got all that right, and that was from a January post. April 3 is when Dusk started making these posts and claims. He is technically taking stuff from that leak. He's not giving credit to the original anonymous leaker, right? I don't get where he's going about this stuff about the Jesse stuff or him stealing from, like, no, you're stealing from a leaker whose name we don't even know. That's the point I think the guy on Reddit was trying to make, for Christ's sake. January 28, 2020, first details. Yeah, see? This is when the first details emerged. Courtesy... Okay, so Biohazard Cast. Courtesy of an article posted by Biohazard Cast. So this was posted on Biohazard Cast, not declassified. We receive our first rumors about the next installment in the series. The information comes as a direct follow-up to the previous claims by Dusk Golem, basically stating that these claims are false, while sending in some of their own insider information for the site's anonymous tip line. The interesting pieces of information are as follows. Ethan will be returning as a playable character. True. Resident Evil 8 was tested last year. Plausible. It will not be called Resident Evil 8 but have a clever title. True. It was called Village. The game will be in first person like RE7. True. The gameplay starts in a village leading up to a castle. Again, true. The environment will be rural, snowy, and mountainous, possibly Europe. True. Regular zombies will be appearing instead of the molded from RE7. Almost true. We got sort of like these enemies and that were like zombies. Yeah. There is a persistent, shadowy female enemy that will follow you but will disappear if shot. I guess that was somewhat true. I guess those were the daughters. There are also wolf-like creatures that will attack the player in certain areas. True. Chris Feltfield will also be returning in some capacity. True. A very interesting tip, as it turns out that this is all very accurate information and nothing is incorrect. It is safe to assume that this insider was very close to the development team, as the hinting of a clever gaming title in particular stands out to me as peculiar. Outcome, accurate, genuine leak. So this was the leak. This is the leak that the Reddit dude is talking about. Okay, he's talking about this leak, and it was posted to Biohazard Cast. And Dusk, for whatever reason, is confusing it with this and the Biohazard Declassified one. This came out on January 28th, as we see. Now, if we go back, January 2021. So, 2021, January 2020, Dusk said the game was years away. January 28th, we get this leak from this anonymous leaker posted on Biohazard Cast, which ends up pretty much being right. Dusk then makes the same leaks on April 3rd, 2028, basically stealing that info and not crediting the original leaker and taking it as his own, and he's saying that it was Revelations 3. So of course he ended up being bloody wrong here. Moving on, April 16, 2021, Dusk Golem leaks Moron Encounter. Capcom can't catch a break with RE insider Dusk Golem once again, grabbing the headlines as he leaks everything he knows about the encounter with one of RE8's major villains, Morrow. I know his area plays a lot like End of Zoe. You go through snowy mount forests and swamps, wade through water. There's a siren mermaid type enemies who can shriek to attack you, and when you're in water, come for you. But there's items and such in the water you can try and collect. Plus, in his whole area, there's this giant tyrant-esque monster that stalks you. But it's got this bloating up poison bag that spews acid. Then other weird things. His area is very culty. Enemies doing rituals in the forest. He has one of the biggest boss arenas in the entire series. This huge open area near the windmills that's like Krauser's arena from RE4 but bigger. And then of course there's the boat section and lake monster. Inaccurate. Yeah, this was pretty much inaccurate. Some of it actually seems a bit real. The bloating up poison bag and that. But here's the thing. We don't know how much of this is true. We don't know if there were mermaid type enemies. We don't know if there was a cult in that area. We don't know, like, the only part I feel like that's legit is the windmill, because we did go past the windmill and there was the boat section and there was the lake monster, which ended up being Moira himself. But this whole, you know, you're going through water, there's sirens and maidens. I don't know. And this was posted April 16, and the game would end up releasing literally 1 month later. Like, and keep in mind, right, we know that this game had a lot of things that were cut. There were a few leaks here and there, and we did see a few things that were in the game, or in this case leaks that weren't in the final version. Very, very quick things, like there was like a box that was similar to the box that Ethan finds in RE7 with the Eveline fetus or whatever, and there might have been some other stuff, and there was like something with a ring that he has to take out and put into the box, and that ended up not being in the final version of the game. So obviously they made some changes, but for Dusk to post something on April and then literally the next month the game comes out and most of it is bullshit, you kind of have to wonder, like, I always did feel like the Moria section was somewhat cut up. It felt like there would have been more to it, but I don't know. Because we don't know, we have no confirmation about the sirens and stuff, we can never know if this is legit or not. But yeah, most of the stuff he posted about RE8 was bullshit. It was bullshit, and we're going to go through more of that as we go on. So, but no, it's that we talked very regularly. Start over on Skype, which I've lost records of on point. Oh, you lost the records of stuff you talked about on Skype. Interesting. Continued onto Discord as pictured here, but I'll stop sharing. I think people get the point. The Alex Wesker Daniel thing for RE8 is one of only 2 tweets related to leaks. Yeah. Interesting. Makes sense, and long term will be appreciated. I feel as R40 is an interesting little gem in the series history and having a better watchable version as well. What's this he talking about? Are you busy? I've got what you might be weirdest message yet. No, I'm okay. I just had a thought that makes me believe this more. So I know the RE7 DLC guys worked on the DLC and experimented with some concepts for Village in the DLC. In RE7's End of Zoe, there's those moments where you go into the wall of alligators. Yeah, I realized the description of this mermaid stuff sounds similar to the swamp segments in End of Zoe. And for some reason, I actually makes me believe it more since I heard they do stuff in the DLC to test some stuff for Village. That was bullshit. They didn't test anything for that. Scrap metal in Village. Did you play Rogue? Okay. I've ever deleted requests. What is this? The Alex is one of the two related leaks that I've ever deleted, requested by a source because I was wrong about it straight up. Some people say I delete my tweets. I don't. There's only 2 tweets I deleted shortly after posting them on request of people I know, and I sometimes delete a tweet I just sent to fix a typo. Really? Really? Okay. So if you ever want to find anything I've ever tweeted, search it up. It should still be there. Speaking of, I actually talked about what I just said back in 2020 before RE8 came out, actually. Jesse earns his flowers of RE8 a lot of later. Okay, so here's interesting. Okay, let's read for this and then I'll go back, yeah? Jesse earns his flowers of RE8. A lot of later stuff we heard confirmed the number of things he heard about, like the mermaid monsters being cut and the unfortunate stuff with the cold third character stealth segment with Elena, which actually one of the segments featured in a Kevin. Okay, so I remember this Elena stuff. He didn't post this, no. This was actually one of the early test previews I remember reading about back in the day before RE8 came out, where you got to play as Elena and there was like lanterns and you're in a cave. And then the final version came out and that was not in the game. So I think this was true. I think there was a lot of stuff they did cut in this game. So maybe the mermaid stuff is legit, but we don't know. To light stuff with to ward off enemies, sensitive light, which reminds me a bit of the new RE9 section, so that's fun. Now for the Outrage Revelations 3 stuff. Jason and I talked a lot about all of this. Up front, Outrage was a multiplayer game mode attached to Revelations. So he's saying Outrage was a multiplayer game mode attached to Revelations 3. Okay. Up front, Outrage was a multiplayer game mode attached to 3. Yeah. And apparently this was a concept art for Wesker, but we know that this was for RE4 Remake. Was it for Revelations 3 or the Outrage mode? Don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Was a multiplayer mode attached to RE3 that starred Wesker as a crucial role of the events of Code Veronica. The Reddit post once again claims I stole details. I read through the Reddit post. He doesn't claim you stole from Jesse. No. What he's claiming, and what I've been claiming as well, and what a lot of people have been claiming, is that you went around saying that RE8 was Revelations 3. Which we now know wasn't. You then went on to say that Revelations 3, or Outrage, was in fact a Rebecca Chambers game that was supposed to release on the Switch, which never panned out. And then you later made another post saying that Revelations 3 was actually a multiplayer game starring Wesker. Now, Andy from Screenfire Germany would later make some claims, and he mentioned in one of his posts that the Outrage thing was a multiplayer game starring Wesker. Here, Dusk is basically combining both of those leaks into one. So this is actually new information. This is something I didn't know. This is something I think a lot of people didn't know. We all thought this was separate stuff. But the thing is, we can't prove it. Because there's no proof. There's no proof that a Revelations 3 existed. There is no proof that an Outrage game, with the exception of the leak that we got, existed. Like, we know that Capcom was making a game called Outrage. We don't know what it was about, though. That's the thing. So, okay, the Reddit post once again claims that, and they were right and I was wrong. I fucking proofread the article they're referencing. Fun fact, the person who used to run Capcom's ambassador tests after the Revelations 3 article and tweets by myself when are all happy about it, and they tweeted how they need to rethink how to handle these tests. Details wouldn't leak. If you want, how they test, so details wouldn't leak. If you want additional confirmation that the Revelations 3 details and demo report were legitimate. Revelations 3 was cancelled in 2022, but get to that if relevant to this thread. I'll move on to the next point now. So this is the translation from that post here. Maybe the way ambassadors are done needs to change too. It's partly because the situation has changed in various ways with COVID, right? Again, we'll never really know the truth about Revelations 3. We won't. But to go into detail about it, this, Revelations 3, there was someone that did a big, massive post on Outrage. Now, this could have been Jesse. I don't know. But this person made a whole post on Twitter about how the game was about Rebecca Chambers. and how it was set in a university, an affected university, and how the virus was causing like people to rage up, and that's how they would get infected and mutate in that. And I think they mentioned liquors or something were in it. I don't know. I have to go into a bit more detail on that later, but I'll try and see if I can find anything there. Moving on. My comments on the... So this is fun. My comments on the performance of the PS5 version of Village are very often mistaken to what I actually said and meant. Here's my original comment of, if I want to read it. And my comments here are accurate. You actually don't. So... You actually don't need to take my word for it. I regret saying them, but people say I said I was lying, which no, I wasn't. Look at the OG Resident Evil Village trailer running on PS5. Says so in the trailer itself, and tell me it looks like RE8 isn't clunking. Right, so let's read for this. Is your source an indie dev or AAA dev? How can you verify Series X will be cheaper? Devs don't know that stuff. Okay, so I guess I'll just come clean here. I'm talking about Resident Evil Village. The game's terrible performance at the PS5 reveal event with the terrible frame rate present in the trailer was kind of the current status of the game on PS5 as of a few months ago. The thing is, apparently the game runs perfectly on Xbox X. They've been having some troubles getting the frame rate stable on PS5, which, as Sony had a rule to record the PS5 event gameplay on PS5, led to the weird frame showing in that trailer, but it's running in the RE5 engine and they'll be making more optimizations to take advantage of the game there. The price stuff is from different sources. I said that earlier, but we'll clarify here. You've been right on many things in the past. There's no reason not to take your word seriously, but why would you great experience of a dev team on RE8 to say multi-platform games in general will run a lot better on Xbox, or how we should be preparing ourselves for it? It doesn't jive, but it's going to drive that discussion for weeks and months, as you have seen by the activity in the last few hours already. From what I've definitely heard from other dev friends of mine, Xbox X does have the advantage when it comes to multi-platform games on most fronts, but this is still antithetical from the few people I've talked to on this topic. But I think that some people should get ready for that, as it was consistent at least with everyone I've talked to with making games for PS5 and Xbox X. Isn't the RE8 trailer captured from PS5 native 4K? Something is missing somewhere. Even PS4 Pro could run RE8 for the tests as seen in the leaks. So why would PS5 have issues if PS4 Pro is running the internal tests? Yes, but the game had issues also at 1080p. I'm not just speaking of the trailer, though you can clearly see it in the trailer, which I had asked further about and led to this point. The game has been updated a lot since the PS4 version, character models, effects already, it's a whip. But the build where it's at nobly was only having issues on PS5. There's any number of reasons for that, and I don't know the specifics. I know that tad bit, and it is true. However, I also know that Capcom has some very talented people. The engine is very customizable, so it will probably be working perfectly by launch. But it's an odd, notable thing, though I should have clarified my comment was on one game. Okay. It's still a bit strange because he went out of his way to mention this and he keeps saying it's clunking. I watched this trailer. I didn't feel like it was clunking. I didn't feel like there was any issues to this, so I don't know what he's on about. Like, that first trailer was fine for what it was. I don't understand the issues he's saying there. It felt like he was making up shit just to say shit. This was also around the time where they said I was banned off Red Cedera, which I wasn't, and the reason I stepped down from moderating for it is other reasons, but people wave the narrative about me as usually happens. Now to the recent stuff. This will be fun. Okay, so what's this? Okay, so we can stop here. This is the RE8 stuff. We can stop here talking about it. And I'm going to try and see if I can find some other info here about this, so give me a sec. Alright, so moving on with the RE8 stuff. Let's go through it. Let's see. So we're still with Nori stuff. Like, okay, so this was a post he made, I think, after he made that previous post about the whole PS5 version. Okay, I got some clarification of why they made RE8 next gen only when it was cross-gen previously, which makes no bloody sense. With the updated graphic fidelity overhaul they're doing still in progress, the way RE8 was designed led to past gen consoles having a lot of pop-in long texture loads. Load times, because the game has you traveling through most of the village and had a lot of load zones. Because there's a bigger focus on exploration, this would lead to last gen console versions having notable issues, and it was holding back how pretty they could make certain scenes. So it decided to drop the last gen versions of the game to make it so that the game had no loading at all, not limited by last gen hardware, and push the graphic overhaul further without the limitations of last gen tech in mind. So this is bullshit. This is bullshit because they ended up making a last gen version anyway. Look, he says it here. So they decided to drop the last gen versions of the game to make it so the game had no loading at all. He's literally lying and contradicting himself right here. And this is his post. This is his fucking Twitter. This is his fucking Twitter. Look at it. He's literally lying here. And he's got... and he's saying... And what was he saying here in the previous page? Oh, no need to... I regret saying that, but people say I said I was lying, which no, I wasn't. You were lying. You were literally lying. So he decided to drop the last gen versions of the game to make it so... This guy's a fucking... He's a fucking idiot. He's a fucking idiot. And then, of course... This is something I forgot to talk about. So this was April 6, 2020. Test demo details leaked. It seems that the anonymous tipper... So this was the anonymous guy that posted this stuff in January 2020 about RE8. He was the one that was right on the money. And apparently this guy ended up posting more stuff. As Biohazard caster received more information, this time about some demos that insiders got to play. It seems that insiders got the chance to play the now titled Resident Evil Village earlier in 2020. And keep in mind, Village, yeah? He's saying Village. The game was not revealed until June 2020. So there's at least 2 months left before the game was officially revealed as Village. The now titled Resident Evil Village early in 2020, and that there were multiple versions of the demo available for the players. Before jumping into differences, let's cover some similarities. Both of them featured Ethan as the playable character, both of them featured the same village introduction, and both of them introduced a witch character that would stalk the character. The village was infested with wolfmen in both demos, and both featured the chase sequence that went down a little bit differently. Finally, there is mention of a gorilla-like monster man with chains and a staff. That was kind of true. It was that big giant dude. Now the difference is, while both demos did feature series favorite Chris Redfield, insiders were noted saying that some versions of Chris looked like his RE7 counterpart and that others looked tiny different. Additionally, Mia did feature in an opening sequence, with one demo having her pregnant with Ethan's child and an alternative demo having the child already been born. Another big difference in the demo comes when the player would get to the town. During an escape sequence, some players were given weapons while others were given nothing and purely had to run. Depending on your demo, the walls were called off by either a bell ringing or something unseen calling them away. Finally, the quote will rely on horror. Some versions of the demo appear to have you escape to a castle, while others have you meet up with a group of normal human villagers and talk your way into their refuge to hide out from the monsters. One of the villagers inside begins to hallucinate and eventually lashes out and begins to butcher the other villagers. You manage to escape with one of the other villagers, a woman who helped you into the house, as the hallucinating villager sets it ablaze. The demo ends there. Here. Outcome confirmed. Everyone who is familiar with the game can see the defined resemblance in those early tech demos to be final product. Yeah, so again, and obviously there were minor differences. We know this game went through a lot of different changes. There's a lot of things they did, a lot of things they cut. We do know that, but we don't know what is confirmed. I will say this here. I do remember Dusk saying that the original Benovito house had a section where Ethan was supposed to get small. He would hallucinate and he's small. And it's basically like Alice in Wonderland, and you're going through these areas that are now big and large. However, apparently that was all cut and changed. Now, funny enough, that would later be brought back in the DLC with Shadows of Rose. And they did bring that concept back where Rose is small and she's going through these large areas and that. So that part is actually accurate. They reused a cut element of the game. So that's something Dusk did get right. I will credit him for that. Dusk Golem was lying about fake 4K. So apparently Dusk Golem, who started the fake 4K stuff, has been sacked as mod on Red Set Era and Fred Lock. He admitted that he started it to even things up after bad Xbox news, had no tech knowledge and only knew bits and pieces about very early RE8 build. Now, when you try to go on this link, however, it's a post that's from a suspended account, so you can't read what it said. We have no idea of actually knowing whether he was banned or not, or whether he stepped down. The only people who would know this are Red Set Era themselves. But the fact that he's got this post here where he's literally lying his ass off, right? Where is it? Is it this one? Certain scenes. So they decided to drop the last gen versions of the game to make it so that the game is no loading over. He's lying. He's lying. This post right here from him literally shows he's lying his ass off. Like, he... But yeah, moving on. So regarding the Jesse stuff. Okay, this is interesting because of the several different sources regarding what characters are returning in Outrage and RE9. First off, one source from 4chan. So apparently there was a 4chan post, and you can't find these 4chan posts. Once you post on 4chan, it goes after a week. One source from 4chan and Dusk, and another source connected to Dusk, have said the same things in regards that Outrage will star Rebecca Chambers as the main character and set in a university involved in a rage virus, which is something I already mentioned, yes. Natalia Alex Wesker, Net Alex if you want, will be the secondary main character villain of the game. Now here's where the sources are different. The 4chan source said the supporting cast consists of Barry Burr and Ada Wong. Dusk's colleague, I believe, and I think this might be Jesse, I don't know. Dusk's colleague, I believe, said Leon would be a supporting character. Okay. Now, Dusk is saying Jill may be in it or in RE9. Now, yeah, this is a post that Dusk did say, where someone asked him if Jill was coming back, and Dusk said that Jill may be in RE9 or Revelations 3. So, personally, I'm going to go with 4chan being one being right, because if Natalia is involved, then surely Barry would get involved too, and Ada was originally planned for RE8, but scrapped, so could appear in Outrage instead. Now, both Dusk and the 4chan source said RE9 would serve as the final numbered RE title. Now, I think this is where the guy is getting mixed up when he's saying that Dusk said that it would feature, like, the 4 core characters, and that it would be the final number, because apparently the 4chan post used the same wording that it would be the final numbered title. So yeah, now both Dusk and the 4chan source said RE9 would serve as the final numbered RE title, and that it'd be a pretty big game, with the game already in development sometime during when RE8 was in development, similar to what happened with RE7. So yeah, I think we knew this. We knew RE8 was in development, what, 6 months before RE7 came out, and I think it was a similar situation with RE9 maybe, but he scrapped that version and we ended up with this version, so the difference, however, is story and characters. Dusk, I believe, said RE9 would serve as an ending to the Winters storyline, or as he calls it, the Ethan Winters trilogy. So one would assume RE9 takes place after the RE8 epilogue and will star Rosemary Winters as the main character. I think that was a lot of our assumptions at the time, yeah. However, the 4chan source said that RE9 would take place between the ending of RE8 and its epilogue, and would star and be the final game starring Chris, Leon, Claire, and Jill, with other returning characters serving as support in each of the 4 campaigns being designed for the core 4, and that Outrage would serve as a prequel to RE9, setting up the events of RE9 to come, and that surviving characters in Outrage will return as support in RE9. So this kind of feels like bullshit. I don't remember if I ever did talk about this or made a video about this. I'm not too sure. It's been years, guys. I don't know how true this is. One minute you have sources saying the same thing, and suddenly it gets split apart when it comes to the main characters and actual story, so who knows. At this point, I'm waiting to see what characters will return in Outrage. If Rebecca, Natalie, Barry, are indeed returning all together in Outrage, then I think I remember this. Yeah, there was this whole post saying that RE Outrage would be a prequel to RE9, and that RE Outrage would end, leading to an apocalypse, and that's why RE9 was called Apocalypse. That you would go into this RE9 game and it would be in a apocalyptic area and you would be playing as the 4 core characters. I think I remember that, yeah. At this point, I'm waiting to see what happens. We'll return I'm not saying the 4. If not, then so yeah. Then I'm inclined to believe, yeah. Then if not, I mean Rosemary. At this point, it's all a waiting game. Why everyone is fussing over RE4 anyway? I'm here, okay. To be honest, I'm skeptical of that 4chan leak, mostly because a lot of the information it claimed was already proven wrong. The claims are as follows: Resident Evil Village would not be receiving DLC. Wrong. Here's the thing: it wasn't going to receive DLC. It wasn't. It was never a plan for RE8 to have DLC. It was because of fan demand that Capcom went in and made the DLC. And as we know as well, they made the DLC because they wanted to wrap up the Winter storyline. They didn't want this to go into a 3rd game or have people believe it would go into a 3rd game. Remember, they had 2 options apparently. When the DLC was being designed, they had 2 options: either go with the Chris versus BSA plot, or go with an adult, with a young Rosemary. And they went with the Rosemary one because they wanted to wrap up that storyline. They wanted to wrap up the Winter stuff. And that was done so they wouldn't have to have that be a focus in a big numbered RE title. So, Outrage would be announced at E3. Wrong. Yeah, Outrage was never announced. And now Dusk is saying that it was actually a multiplayer game that was part of Revelations 3. Don't know. REverse would be launching in November. Wrong. Outrage would only feature 2 playable characters, but Dusk Golem said the game has 3. Apocalypse would feature 4 playable characters. Dusk Golem apparently said the game only has 2. So that part was right. If that is actually true, then yeah, he did say 2, okay. I can't find any evidence of him talking about it and saying RE9 would feature 2 playable characters, but okay. I can't confirm that though, just something I've read several times. As for Leon being an Outrage, Dusk Golem said that information came to him from a source he doesn't usually use and that it's not something he confirmed. He doesn't seem confident in that claim, okay. If I had to use a source, I'd go with Dusk Golem. The 4chan leak is a little suspect if you ask me. Yeah, this is actually true, but the whole DLC thing feels like something decided. Yeah, that was last minute. And yeah, Dusk even said there was no DLC planned. The DLC was supposed for everyone, including him. Improving on, yeah. Not really. Now we can see here that he was actually sort of credible with RE2 and RE3 somewhat. He was not right on the money with RE8. We already know that was BS. I think that's what's getting confused. Yeah, like it was a 4chan post. That's the thing. I remember seeing a post as well that literally said that Dusk said that the 4 core characters would be coming back, but I think it was the 4chan post. I think anyone who read that probably got mixed up with that. So yeah, but yeah, moving on. Now to recent stuff. This will be fun. So yeah, I'm gonna pause here. I think that's pretty much all we can do when it comes to RE8, and we're gonna move on to the RE9 stuff because that's gonna be a whole big like video by itself. So yeah, guys, remember to like and subscribe, please. And yeah, I shall see you when I shall see you in the next part. This is exhausting.